Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate your time for this. This is one of our series of webinars at MAGNiTT that we're doing for our clients on different use cases. The last week we did tracking international investors on MAGNiTT and the exposure to international capital in light of the recent events in the region and effects on international capital. This time, we're going to focus on using MAGNiTT for due diligence. Obviously, that's a big topic. It's a big use case, obviously, at MAGNiTT. Um, and again, this is also a result of a lot of client feedback and a lot of things that we've been hearing from our clients. So I'm just going to give a quick introduction of what this webinar will be about, and then we will go into some of the specifics of doing due diligence on MAGNiTT and some of the new features we'd like to show you in that regard as well. So we've been gathering feedback from clients, obviously, over the past several months, actually, and the past years. One of the few things that we've identified the most that are very important is additional details on information on deals and investors and different views of looking at that. So this is what the webinar will be will be focused on. And we're also very lucky that on this call as well, we have our head of engineering, Taimur Ahmad, who is joining this call. And actually, he's going to be taking the second part of this call. Hi, Taimur. The second part of this call, where we'll be talking about upcoming features that are relevant to different use cases, specifically due diligence, VC due diligence, and he's going to be taking you through that part. But I will start with generally the agenda of today. Why does it matter? Why are we doing this? What are the challenges that we've noticed and seen, specifically with due diligence, specifically when it comes to the region, to the MENA and the emerging venture markets? Second thing is we're going to look at the data that we have on banking that allows you to do this. How can you identify it from building a deal pipeline, looking at who's invested in a startup, to identifying investors in general, co-investors in the space, and specifically then deep diving on investor profiles and seeing what happens on the investor profiles and all the new things that we've added there that will help you with this particular exercise. And then we're going to go into more of a big picture element is how does what I have compare to the market, the deal that I'm running, or the deals that I'm running, or that I'm evaluating at the moment, how do they compare to the market? How you can do that with MAGNiTT? How can you pull data from the platform and you run it through your own models? We're going to cover that, specifically everything that has to do with the platform. And at the end, the section that Taimur will take over is what's next for MAGNiTT, what we will be doing in the near future, with all of the exciting things that we're working on at MAGNiTT, and obviously your feedback in that. And at the end, there's going to be a Q&A. So please feel free to ask me or Taimur at the end. Um, everything that's basically on your mind after you've went through the webinar, specifically, how can you apply it to your use case? Want to keep in mind that everything that I'm showing you here, see how you can apply it to your workflow. Anything else that we can add, any other questions that you might have from the technical aspect and methodology aspect, Taimur can answer that. From the more platform usability, that would be myself, and then we'll take it from there. So without further ado, why does it matter? Why are we doing this? What are the challenges? What are the different things that we had that we've seen, working on this specific exercise? And again, this is from the perspective of a lot of the feedback that we've gotten from clients and from experience of using, different tools. Obviously, everyone has different tools, different platforms that they use for data, but the idea is that the data is fragmented. There's some unverified data. There's it's not maybe not consistent, but the thing is at MAGNiTT, what we do is we make sure that the data is verified and goes through verification with our data team, and also looking at different, different parties to verify the data that we get on startups, funding, and so on and so forth. Once we specifically reach out regularly to investors to make sure that their investments are correct and up to date on the platform, in addition to what we get from public sources. So that's one section to it. Regional benchmark. Obviously, we there's a lot of figures and numbers from all around the world when it comes to different things such as valuations, deal sizes, and all the other details. Now, at MAGNiTT, what we want to do is try to give a regional benchmark so that you can have a more region accurate picture rather than just, getting something from a more mature market and applying it regionally, which obviously might not make sense. Manual investor mapping, you have your networks, you go to events, you see people, there's websites, etc. But what we try to do is to put it all in the same place so that you can have an accurate picture of the investors with what they really invested in and all of the details around that. At the end, obviously, you want to be preparing for ICs. You want to make sure that your information is correct. So we provided some of the few tools that we have on the platform, a few tools that can help you do that, hopefully a bit faster. So I'm going to start with the first part, which is identifying the data, and we're gonna take a very simple example that we're gonna do. So we're going to work first on building a deal pipeline, and once you log in on the MAGNiTT platform as someone who has access to the MAGNiTT platform, specifically the directories feature, this is where all the data is, right? And I've mentioned about data verification and all that. Let's say I'm an investor and I'm an investor that is particularly interested in early stage startups in, let's say, the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Just as an example, I want to see what's going on in the market. Obviously, I'm working on deals that are similar in this regard, and I want to make sure what's going on in the market, um, what are the numbers like, who's investing, and all of that. So to do that, I first need to go into directories. I need to go to the startup section. And under the startup section, I see here a bunch of results from all the way from the startups themselves to the deals, to the exits, including IPOs, by the way, landscape view and chart view. But from a very quick perspective, I can just go to edit filters. And what we've done is we've kind of put the key criteria there here at the beginning section of the filters. And I'm going to search for a few things. One of the most important things that I'm looking at is I'm looking at fintech. I mentioned fintech, so that's going to be my first filter. Then I need to look at investment dates. Let's say I'm just looking at what happened in the past year until today. So that would be from January 2025 under investment date until today. Now, I mentioned I'm interested in early stage. So for me to do that, I need to go specifically to another section, which is deal information. Very important that I put verified funding by MAGNiTT. And I need to also select the early stages. And for me, that would be the funding stage that has happened under seed and pre-seed. So I'm going to do that. The second thing is I mentioned location. So the way on MAGNiTT that it works is we're looking either at the current HQ of the startup, which might not reflect exactly the investments, because what if they moved HQ from when they raised their investments until now? So we'd rather look at investment location. Specifically, I mentioned I'm interested in the UAE and Saudi, so I'm just going to type UAE, and then I'm going to type Saudi Arabia. And as a result of that, I here have the results of seed and pre-seed startups that raised these rounds between January 1st, 2025 until today, specifically in the UAE and Saudi Arabia. And I can see that these are the rounds that have happened. And these are, so I can see that, for example, Jozo raised in a seed stage, that it was basically an equity round. 2.2 million. This was the estimated valuation that we have for that particular deal. And I can see that so far it has raised 2.2 million. So it was probably its only round in terms of the disclosed funding. And I can see who the different investors are. Now, I can even go on every single investor. So let's take Utexo as an example. Obviously, it'll open it in another tab. And I can see a few things here. I can see specifically that this particular round has happened. This is the history of this particular startup, and I can see who the other investors were and what their what was their individual ticket size and was a seed round. This is the estimated valuation. So that's on just the startup level, and I can actually save the search and access it later, so that I'm gonna call it early stage fintech, KSA, and UAE, and I can save that, and I can actually access it later on from the saved views. there's a portion of this where we can go and export the data, but we're not there yet. I want to actually go to the next step and take a look at the investor side of things, which is under investors. So I'm going to go under investors, under directories. We're going to look at a very similar search. However, we're going to look at identifying the investors that are a part of this ecosystem, specifically investing in these stages. So first, I need to go to investors, then I need to go to edit filters. Really quickly, I'm going to look at investment demographics, and I'm going to look at investment location. This would be Saudi. This would be UAE. And then I'm looking at investment funding stage. This was seed and pre-seed. And we're looking at investment date, the dates that happened, as I mentioned, from Jan 1st, 2025 to today's date, actually. And then we're going to press update, and I can also save that search. But then I get an idea of the kinds of investors who are investing in this particular space over the past 16, 17 months, basically, since January 1st, 2025. And I can see a bunch of things. So I can see that Plus VC here has 32 investments in this particular space in fintech in early stage. This is how much capital they've deployed within that, and a lot of other pieces of information. And I can also export this data offline. But let's say I'm interested in learning a bit more about one of these investors as part of my exercise to understand, okay, they have all of these, they have all of these investments, but what do these investments really look like? So let's say I'm interested in 500 global. I'm going to take a look at 500 global. I'm sure if many of you are familiar. Once I open 500 global's profile, what we've done, and some of you have done this before, they've taken a look at profiles of investors. They've seen that maybe there's not enough information. There's not that particular maybe data that you're looking for. We've added a few more things on here, and thanks to our data and engineering teams for working on this, is we've given you additional views to understand, if I'm going to be working with this investor, what is their investment history like? What is their average ticket size? How many companies are active in their portfolio, as in still functioning, still working? How much have they raised in terms of the funds that they're managing from the LPs? Again, this is within the regions that we cover, so Middle East, Africa, Turkey, Pakistan, Southeast Asia. How many LPs do they have from what we're tracking? The total number of investments and how many of these startups have exited. And under that, you can even see what's their median deal size, understand what's going on over here. You can also see the median valuation range. So on average, what's the median valuation range of what they've invested in post money, ticket size range, and also how many investments they made in the past 12 months, so trailing 12 months investments, the first investing year that they've had, that obviously on record with us. And interestingly, we've added this, which is portfolio insights. You get to see how they've deployed their capital, how much have they've deployed of their capital, and also how many deals they've done in the past few years. You can see that there is obviously a big spike in 2022. There were a few more deals happening in the past 3, 4 years. You can see the portfolio composition is mostly Singapore, Malaysia. You have Saudi Arabia and the UAE there, so it might be relevant to me. Under that, you have the industry section as well. You can see that there's a lot of interest in e-commerce and retail and fintech. And then on the stage side of things, you can see that they do invest a lot in early stage, followed by Series A and Series B. And also you can see some pre-seed there as well. Also interesting and also relevant to obviously looking at the different investors that are active in the space or that you might want to be working with is right over here. We have a full list of their investments. And you can also view it in the deal directory in the similar format that you saw before when I was looking at the ecosystem in terms of early stage investments in fintech in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. But what we have over here is a bit more insight. What we have over here is the median check size based on the disclosed investments that we've captured. You have the follow-on rate. So how likely are they to potentially invest first and then follow up with another round or 2 or 3, and we have that's 23% for that. What's their most active stage, as in which stage have they invested in the most based on the data that we have? And then when was their latest deal announced? And also, interestingly enough, is obviously you can go through the whole list of investments. You can see what were these deals. And again, it's all clickable. You can go to that startup's profile as a result. The HQ of the startup at the time of raising, the stage, the date, the investment amount. This is obviously an estimate of the ticket size. What is we've added here is what is in like a gray shade is basically that it's not it's estimated based on the data that we have and also confirmed based on a confirmation from one of the sources that we have. That would be one of the investors. That would be in a black color. And obviously the estimated valuation. Who are the other investors? If you click on that, you'll be able to see that. And if it's a follow-on round or not. So you'll be able to kind of see that. We're going to be adding a few more improvements here in terms of visibility and making it easier to kind of read. But also you can now filter by fund. So which fund did they deploy from in order to fund these startups? We've mapped out the top 100 MENA-based investors, and we've added the fund allocation or mapping for each of their investments. So we've done that, and this is a continuous effort. And that Timur will also highlight in terms of what we're doing in that front and what's coming next, specifically when it comes to fund visibility, which I know a lot of you have mentioned. You want to understand things like fund performance. You want to understand things like dry powder. That's coming soon in the future. And Timur will give you a bit more visibility about that. But in any case, if you want to take these deals to to your to take them offline or to view them in a different, you can just go to view deal directory, and then you just go and you head straight into the directory again, and you have all these deals here under the funding view, and you can actually take that as in a couple of different ways. You can even have a chart view for this investor to understand the deal deployment over time, the distribution of those deals by country. You can even create a PDF of this offline for your own, IC, or if you're preparing for any of that. But what's also even more interesting is you can actually go and look at the distribution of that in a visual way by industry or sub-industry, which is also another way that you can look at the data. And then if you go back to funding view, you can actually go and you can export this data offline, which I think brings us to the next part of that is if you're interested in a piece of a set of data and you want to run your own models, understand every analyst or group or organization has their own models that you want to run through, you can do that. You have access to the export feature. You can go ahead and you can actually download that offline into an Excel that comes straight to your email. All you need to do is go to export, make sure that you've selected all of the columns and make sure that you have obviously enough export quota and just click on send request. And then I will get all the deals that 500 Globals has done relevant to the area or the industry that I've chosen. I can even go and say, okay, because I'm interested in the UAE and fintech, what have they done in the UAE and fintech? I can just go to edit filters on the same result here, and I can just add fintech. So I know that I'm looking at fintech results, and I only want to see ones that have happened in the UAE and Saudi Arabia. So I can just type that in, and once that's done, I press update, and obviously that will be updated in that regard. And I can also export that offline, or I can even save it and access it later. In any case, you want to export data, you can always also, let's go back to our saved you on early stage fintech and KSA. I can actually go back to that and obviously come back to it whenever I need to. And I can also make sure that I can, export it offline into an Excel. And it has, again, the exact same columns that you saw over here. All of them will be available. So previously, valuations, for example, weren't available in the export. You're going to have the valuation estimate in the export, the upper and lower bound. You get to have that. Other than that, you get to have the fund as well, the fund that it came from, so that you can have that for your own analysis. And also on the investor side of things, if you want to export any of the investor data, you'll be able to get, all of the columns that you see over here. You'll be able to get them with the export. You go to actions, and let's say I'll add one more filter. In this case, I'm just looking at investors who are based in the UAE, not necessarily invested in the UAE, but I'm going to go here and I'm going to press export. and just select all columns, and then I can do that and send request, and I can get all of these in my export. One last thing that I would said is looking at the big picture. So I want to understand just the market from a bigger perspective. Like I said, early stage fintech, but how does that funding look like over time from a bigger picture perspective? Let's say I'm going to look at basically I can go to deal criteria. I can type in the stages that I want. In this case, I want pre-seed and seed, and I'm looking at fintech under the UAE and Saudi. Let's say I'm just looking at UAE, and then I want to look at just fintech. I'm just going to type fintech here, and then we have that. And this is the trend for fintech, and I can actually export this offline, right? As a CSV, the table will have the numbers, and I can create my own chart offline if I want to present it to my IC or anything like that. I'll have that ready. And another thing, the last thing is how does it benchmark against the market? Obviously, we have a specific tool for that that's called deal size analysis. I just go to deal size and valuation evolution. This is under the advanced analytics section. If you have access to that feature, you have access to this. And simply, I can apply the same filters here. In this case, we set fintech, and we want to look at potentially on a MENA-wide level, what does it look like? Or specifically in Saudi or the UAE, depending on what I'm looking at. And early stage deal criteria is going to go over here, and I'm just going to type pre-seed and seed. And then all I'm going to have over here is specifically the mean and median deal valuation and mean and median deal size over time, and I can export that into a CSV. So that's pretty much generally a few quick things that you can do on the MAGNiTT platform when it comes to due diligence, understanding and benchmarking against the market, looking into investor profile specifically. But now I will hand over to my colleague Taimur, who will take us through what is coming next on MAGNiTT and take it from there. I will stay sharing the screen, and just Taimur can tell me when the next slide is. So over to you, Taimur.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Habib. Thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. So just to give you some background, at the start of the year, we made some directional changes to MAGNiTT and the data that we capture. Historically, our focus has been on transaction level data. Who's getting the funding, who is giving the funding, how much amount, and other attributes around that. What we found was that there was an important part missing in the whole picture, which was the funds used for deployment of the money. So we had that data, but it was not on the platform in a very nice way that it can be analyzed. So that's the approach that we took. So now, very soon, we will have a separate clean fund table. We will include the target size of the fund. We will mention clearly that how much of the fund has been deployed, and additional information around that, like who are the LPs in those funds, is the funds closed, is it active, dry powder as well. That's something that we're working on in the background. And wherever there is missing information, we will try to drive those data points and make sure that we provide an estimate, and it will be clearly highlighted that what's estimate and what's the actual value, to make sure that benchmarks are much more or accurate, or at least close to the real value. So this is the main big feature that we're working on. All the investor profiles, all the sections will have the flavor of funds in it. I mean, when I say flavor, you can see every table will have a fund-based filter. So if you look at investment table, already on the investor profile, it has a fund filter at the top, and you can do analysis based on that. This will help you see which investments have been done through the funds. It also shows the follow-ons, and is it a second investment into the same company, third investment. Very soon, you will be able to see that how many investments were successful, as in the startup exited or startup closed down. All those data points will be included in those data points. And reminder, we have a separate section, a fund directory. So these tables will be linked to that as well. Just like the investment table, the way you click on the top right corner to say, show this data in the deal directory, you will be able to say, show that data in the fund directory, and it will open that same data set in the fund directory with everything filtered out. So you can export it and use it for your own analysis offline if you want to, or you want to use the MAGNiTT charting mechanism, you will be able to do that. All right, Habib, we can move to the next slide. Same thing with the fund. There are some additional data points around funds that are coming. We want to make sure that we capture all 360 view of what a fund is, where is it focused in terms of geography, stages, sectors, when did it start, vintage, all that information we are already capturing. The data team is working on this right now. On the product side, we are designing these views and they are in the pipeline right now, and they will be available on the platform very soon. Abhi, we can move to the next round. So as I mentioned before, that all tables will have a flavor of the filters, fund filters. So in exits as well, we are revamping the exit table completely in terms of design. You can already see the acquirer information, where the acquirer is coming from, what type of acquirer it is. Soon you will be able to see the industries of the acquirer as well. But the big thing is that all this is filtered through fund, that this company was in which fund of the investor profile that we are right now. Separately, another aspect that I already mentioned, that we are trying to make sure that wherever the data is not available, we create a derived value or data point so that we can come close to what the real value is. So same thing for exit value as well. We are trying to come up with a model that can be used to estimate the acquisition value wherever it's not available. Again, this will be clearly highlighted. Like in the current view, the estimated or derived values are slightly grayed out. There will be a legend around that to make sure that it's clear to people. And whoever wants to use it, they can use it. If who wants to stick to the actual value or announced value, they can use that information as well. This will be extremely useful to understand the success rate of the investor. And at the top, we will be providing additional data points that will work from fund to fund and show data based on that. From the data point of view, as I mentioned, the data team is working on the funds. So to make sure we have close to 10,000 investors, I believe. So it is extremely important for us that every exercise is done in depth. So what we have done is that we have done a phase-based approach. In phase one, we have picked the top most active investors, MENA-based investors, and we have collected the fund data for them. So far, there are 290 funds across the 100 investors, and we have so far 97% of deals made by these top 100 investors are tagged to a fund. That means that they are bucketed in a fund on the platform, and you can go and analyze that information. Overall, there are 6,500 rows on the platform that have a fund tag to it. All right,
Yeah.
over.
And I think thank you so much, Taimur. I'm gonna open it up for questions. And let me just I think open it up to the Q&A. But I mean, we are happy to answer your questions again. If something pops up later that you want to that you'd like to ask, you can just reach out to me by email. I'd be more than happy to help. But at the moment, if there's any questions, please do let us know. We're here to answer them, whether it's directed to me from the platform perspective, Taimur from a technical perspective. I'm more than happy to answer your questions. Um, can we share the new features that MAGNiTT's developing and planning to launch this year? So we've given you a glimpse of what's coming. I mean, this is what we have on the roadmap. Some of you, we're starting to share a more comprehensive roadmap with some of our clients. You will receive it soon if you haven't yet. So we will, this is something that we're working on sharing, and we will share it with you through an email once it's finalized. So, but we've given you a very small glimpse of that, but the roadmap will have a bit more as to what's coming in the future and some timelines as well. Thank you. Any other questions? You can answer either, ask questions either through the chat. Timur and I'll be able to see those, or you can ask them through the Q&A. Someone's asking if we can the export on advanced analytics. No, that doesn't take from your quota. You can, if you have access to advanced analytics, you can export as much as you'd like, 100 times, I think. So that is something that you can do. So someone's asking, when will the new features be launched? Taimur, can we share any timelines yet, or is it something that is not really confirmed in terms of
So
timeline?
So the funds table, the first slide that I showed, should be available on the platform in June, first half. Same for the exit table as well. They should both be available on the platform during the first half of June.
Amazing. Thank you, Taimur. And again, we are hopefully going to be having another webinar in this series of webinars specifically around dry powder and funds. You will get an email about it once we've confirmed the date so that you can register for it as well. That's something to keep an eye out for next. Any other questions? All right, then. Thank you everyone for your time. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate, again, the feedback that helped make this happen, help all of these changes and all of the work that we're doing. So we really appreciate any feedback that comes as well as a result, of this webinar. As I mentioned, if you can imagine how you can use this in your workflow for due diligence and other things as well, market research. And you have any questions on that, please let us know. You have my email, you can reach out. If there's anything in particular you think we can help you with, any particular use cases we think we can expand on, please do let us know. I'll be more than happy to help. I wish you all a great rest of the day, great rest of the week. Take care, and then see you at the next webinar. Details will be emailed to you soon, and also the product roadmap that will also be sent when it's finalized. Really appreciate your time, everyone, and take care. Bye bye.